Hello everyone, welcome to my Last of Us Part 2, Survivor difficulty, no damage, no crafting, no upgrades, no safes, no listen mode walkthrough, and this is Santa Barbara, the final chapter of this amazing game, and it starts off with us playing as Abby, and you can just get past all these infected, it's very simple. I'm not too sure why you would want to go in the houses, considering that this is Abby's final section, and she really doesn't have to deal with any of the enemies. I mean, the only reason I can think of as to why you would want to go in these houses is for collectible purposes. And of course, this is not a guide meant to be getting collectibles, which I've never really understood why a lot of so-called good walkthroughs are only good when they include collectibles. Like, getting collectibles isn't needed whatsoever when it comes to getting this difficulty done. You know, the skill involved in actually getting this difficulty done and laying down the proper strategies for doing the difficulty is what makes the walkthrough perfect. I mean, if you're going to make a walkthrough about collectibles, just make your own separate video about the collectibles. I highly doubt that a large portion of gamers will try to go for collectibles on the highest difficulty. And not only that, but you're just making sure that the audience isn't wasting time watching moments where you're not doing anything, you're just looking at this collectible. And I appreciate the collectibles on this game, but when it comes to a walkthrough, I don't need them. That's why in my no commentary version, I at least include some of the moments where I'm picking up collectibles and then I'm not skipping cutscenes and all that kind of stuff, because I have a lot of respect for this game. And that's why I made the no commentary version like that. But when it comes to a commentated version, which in my opinion is the best version of a walkthrough because it's far more informative than a no commentary version, why would you ever want to include all those moments with collectibles? You know, I never understood that, and I'm not going to dwell on it. I'm only using this time right now, we're just going through this moment with Abby, as a way to explain the accessibility options. Because I did promise I would explain some of the accessibility options on this game, and this game has a lot. So aside from the general stuff with being able to customize your inputs and being able to toggle between hold and press when it comes to button prompts, this game has a lot of options. You have the ability to turn on auto weapon swap, you can turn on auto pickup. I'm not a big fan of auto pickup because you still have to go through the very slow movement. And then you have the option for lock-on aim, which allows you to automatically lock on enemies when you aim. And then you can adjust the strength of the lock-on. Then you also can apply that setting to arc throws when you're trying to throw any kind of object at an enemy. You have the option to change certain things with the HUD, but there's a lot to list, and I want to focus on the other parts of the accessibility options. I mean, there's stuff for camera shake, motion blur, dolly zoom effect, and field of view and camera distance. I can imagine why people would want a field of view and camera distance, but I don't really notice any changes with the field of view. But when it comes to camera distance, I definitely notice that the camera is placed further back when I increase the value. And then you also have the option for a persistent center dot that will allow you to understand where you're going to aim, and it's very helpful. And then there's also options for navigation assistance, traversal assistance, ledge guard, infinite breath, and skipping puzzles. It's all good stuff, and it definitely justifies why I skip out on a lot of the navigation moments. Because, I mean, you have navigation assistance, so there really isn't a need for me to include those in a commentated version. Then you have the option to enable enhanced listen mode, which will allow you to scan for items and enemies using circle and square. You can change the scan range, the scan time. You can turn on text-to-speech and audio cues. I've actually been experimenting a bit with audio cues, specifically with combat audio cues. And the combat audio cues apply to enemy grab and strike prompts, incoming melee attacks, being impaled with an arrow, aiming at an enemy, and landing a shot on an enemy. I mean, the one I've experimented with the most is the incoming melee attacks. So you'll hear a sound indicating an enemy attack is about to come, but it really isn't that beneficial to me because I find that the placement of the sound is not very reliable in indicating when you're supposed to dodge. I mean, it can be useful for people who are blind, and I'm more of a visual learner that way, but it really doesn't help me in the long run, and the other ones just aren't really that necessary. And this pretty much applies to the combat vibration cues, so it's cool that they're there, but I don't use them whatsoever. And there's a couple of stuff for like audio accessibility options, but that's not really important to talk about. This right here, this is very important to talk about. The combat accessibility options. All of these features in the combat accessibility options are incredible, and if you turn them on, you're going to have no trouble with survivor difficulty whatsoever. So the first thing is that hostages will not escape. So you will not get any moments where the enemies break free from your grab. Allies will not get grabbed. Enemies will not flank. There is reduced enemy perception, which I find to be completely redundant if they're already putting in invisible prone movement. You have reduced enemy accuracy, so this is relative to the chosen difficulty. It's the same case with the reduced enemy perception. Then you have the enhanced dodge, where you just have a lot more leniency with your timing. And then invisible while prone. Now, this one is incredible. So there are 3 different options. So you can have it off, limited, or unlimited. So limited means that the time limit will be based on the stealth difficulty settings. And then unlimited means that the enemies will never be able to see you regardless of whether you're close to them or not while prone. And then you have weapon sway. So I'm amazed that they made this an accessibility feature, because in the first Last of Us, you had to actually use supplements to decrease your weapon sway. But I guess they didn't opt for that. So you can turn off your weapon sway and not have any problem whatsoever with guns that just sway all over the place. Then you have the option for turning on slow motion, where while aiming, the game's speed is reduced. And that is the final combat accessibility option, and all these options are really good. And then you have additional HUD options, and these I need to talk about. So, damage indicators, you can turn that on or off. That's already enabled by default. Then you have awareness indicators, and I highly recommend you turn on awareness indicators if you're not too confident with the stealth, because it can be very helpful to understand where an enemy is seeing you from, and it can also be very helpful to know when you're supposed to retreat back into a slower movement. So it can be very helpful if you're trying to, say, for instance, close in on an enemy, so you can run towards them, see that awareness indicator, and before it even has a chance to fill up, you crouch. It can be very helpful. And then you have hints. Hints are not really needed. Pickup notifications you definitely need. Dodge notifications aren't really needed, but if you want to have them on, you can enable it to be sometimes or frequent. And then you have accessibility options for game difficulty. So obviously you have the different difficulty selections. You can change how much damage you take from the enemies. And you can change the frequency of mid-encounter checkpoints. So the checkpoints you get in the middle of the encounters are dynamic. So they trigger whenever they want to. There's no real control over when the checkpoints change, but the good news is they save the state of the world pretty well. So if you killed enemies, they're dead. And where the enemies left off, it will always be the case. So that can be very helpful. And then when it comes to enemies, you can adjust the accuracy of enemy gunfire, the aggression of enemies advancing and flanking, the complexity of enemy melee combos, which was something I wasn't even aware of when I first played Survivor difficulty. So Survivor difficulty allows the enemies to do more combos, so be very careful of that. And then you can change the movement speed of certain high threat enemies. And then for your allies, you can adjust their aggressiveness and the frequency which they kill enemies. Then for the stealth, you can adjust the enemy's perception, the length of the grace period before the enemies will alert others, which refers to the animation that they do where they just get startled by you before they actually attack you. And then the conditions for grabbing enemies from stealth can be adjusted as well. So I mentioned in Seattle Day 1 of Ellie's section that on Survivor difficulty, you cannot grab enemies from the front, you can only grab them from behind or from the sides. So you can adjust that setting. And then for resources, obviously you'll know what that means, there's no real need to explain it. And that's the accessibility options, so that's all of them. That is a pretty long set of accessibility options. And that is definitely why this game received the gold standard for accessibility options, so feel free to experiment with the accessibility options if you want to. Oh, sorry, there was one last thing. There is an effects you can enable where all of the colors you're seeing right now will be grayed out, and you yourself will be blue, and then the enemies will be red. So this can be very helpful if you're trying to see enemies in dark areas. And it's definitely helpful if you're blind. So it's nice that they enabled that, and that has been the full extent of accessibility options. And that right there was a jump takedown, which you don't even need an upgrade for. I saw that in a video, and I'm amazed you can do that. I was not expecting the game to give you that kind of option, but that is incredible. But for that previous encounter with the infected, it's very simple. You don't need any kind of explanation for it. I mean, the only thing you'll definitely need an explanation for is when you first start the encounter, there are a couple of stalkers, and they feel kind of omniscient because they kind of run around, and it feels like when you're using the audio that they're getting close to you, but I don't think that is the case. And then when you get inside that house, the stalkers are very bullcrap because they can somehow see you through certain pieces of geometry, and then they can alert other enemies to your presence, which is what happened, unfortunately. But before that point, I was at least able to use a distraction to get the stalker that was behind that one piece of cover out of the way, and then I could at least run past him. Now we have this encounter right here with the Rattlers, and it's very simple. The moment that guy turns to the left, start running, and then you only have to deal with 2 enemies in this part. The rest of them you can sneak past. There's one guy who's going to go near a van, and I'm going to do a stealth kill on them, and then I'm going to use the silenced submachine gun to take out the guy that's inside the store. The silenced submachine gun is so overpowered. It fires way faster than the bow and arrow, obviously, and you get a lot of ammo for it. And for the upcoming sections with the Rattlers, you need at least 20 submachine gun rounds. And the good news is, when you kill the guy with the stealth kill, he will always drop 6 submachine gun ammo. And then when you kill the next guy, there is some submachine gun ammo sitting on the counter, and you get 4 from it. So you will always get 20 from that. It's very helpful. And another good reason why this weapon is so good is you're going to be able to use the advantage of shooting enemies in the leg to stop them from detecting you, and then you can grab them and finish them up with a stealth kill. That right there is a Resident Evil 4 mechanic done in stealth, which is one of the things that really impresses me about the stealth on this game. And I'm going to be using this mechanic a lot with the final stealth encounter with the Rattlers, because unfortunately it just doesn't feel very good in its design in certain parts, compared to the Firefly section from the first Last of Us, which I feel was perfectly designed. You could easily see the gracefulness of the designs put in place within the final section of The Last of Us Part 1, but this one, there's just some really questionable design choices that I really need to go into a lot of detail about, because I just wonder how this got past Q&A, and it makes no sense. But I take that guy out with a stealth kill, and correction, I do take out this guy with a stealth kill, so do not use the silenced submachine gun on this guy. Just wait for him to turn to the left, and then take him out. There is the 4 submachine gun ammo right there. And now what you're going to have to do is wait for the owner and her dog to go in that direction. And then when you mantle through this window, you need to go prone immediately, because there's a guy who stares in this direction for such a long time before he decides to turn around. And you're going to be remaining prone for most of the sequence. But you're going to have to be very quick, though, because the owner and her dog will see you at some point if you're not fast enough. But I'm just waiting. I think that guy over there turned. So now is my chance to move, which I'm doing right now. And even if the enemies do happen to spot you here, they will not have enough time to shoot you, which is very beneficial. But I've done the section. And now we're just going to move on. And this is where the final encounter with the Rattlers is going to take place. And it's 3 different encounters put into one. And it's a pretty lengthy process. On this recording, I managed to get the first encounter done easily. I have a really consistent strategy, and it works every single time. The second encounter, I got it on my first try, but there was some RNG in play. But I was able to deal with the RNG accordingly. And then for the final part of the encounter, I had to restart the checkpoint, because I messed up on the strategy, and it was very unfortunate that it happened. But throughout my time practicing this section, I found really good strategies. But the parts where the RNG is present, that's really where it can be very tricky to implement the strategy I'm going to show, and I'll showcase it in this video. But once you get under this train car over here, the encounter is going to begin, and you're able to move a little bit faster upon first starting this encounter, once you get to the right-hand side of the area. And I highly recommend you dodge and then dive to prone, and then you are allowed to sprint at a particular point in order to get near that house right in front of me. So now is your chance right here. And thankfully, the sniper that's up top, he's positioned far enough away that he won't hear you when you're sprinting over here. And once you get to this spot right here, you need to go prone. You need to wait for this woman to turn to the left. Do not pay any attention to that sniper. By the time you start moving out, he will have already turned around. So move in, and be very careful of these stalking bushes over here. For some reason, they don't class as stalking bushes. It makes no sense. So you're going to have to be very quick so that that person behind you doesn't see you, and then you're free to jog over here. And that is the end of this first encounter. But I don't understand why those stalking bushes don't work. You're perfectly concealed in them. They have the same amount of thickness as previous stalking bushes that you've used. And that's just one of the questionable design choices present within this section. But go prone right here, and there's going to be a guy patrolling to the right, so I'm going to take him out with a stealth kill. And then I'm just going to hug the right-hand side of the arena and take out any enemies in my way. The submachine gun is really going to come in handy here. I think it's best if you map the firing button to R1, because I get a lot of moments where I end up double tapping the trigger and then end up firing twice. So that can be a bit of a problem, and it's definitely why you need 20 rounds for the submachine gun if you're mapping the firing button to your triggers. But take out this guy when you're in this spot over here with a headshot, and he is not going to be a problem. Now what you're going to have to do is go inside of this building over here. There's some supplies you can pick up, and there's a guy right in front of you. And pay no attention to the sniper that can see him, because you can kill him in plain sight, and he will not react whatsoever. But I still highly recommend you wait for him to go to the right, then shoot him. And I'm just going to wait for the sniper to move. And there are two other enemies that are very random in their placements whenever you restart this encounter. So there's a lot of different permutations to this particular section. For this particular permutation, I get it where this woman is all the way to the right, and then the enemy that is on the outside, so he's right over there, he goes to the left, so I'm able to take out this woman with a stealth kill. There can be another permutation where she will go to the left, and this guy will go into the corner, and you can kill the guy with a headshot, and she will not react so long as she doesn't do a turning animation. So make sure you watch for her to do the turning animation, then shoot the guy, if you get that particular permutation. And now's my chance to take her out. Place her very close to this barricade, because the sniper does have a tendency of seeing you for a little bit. Or that might have been the guy that is all the way to the left right now, like right in front of me. Right, see that guy right there? He's staring in this direction, so you gotta be careful of him. But I'm not going to take out the other guy when he decides to come back over here, and I'm just gonna use a stealth kill against him. I highly recommend you keep this guy hidden so that he's very close to the wall that he's at right now, because there's an enemy patrolling within the house, and she has a tendency of spotting his dead body if you don't place him in the right spot, because she does a lot of turning animations. But now's your chance. You might need to do the quick turn while you're holding him, just so you can place him right near the wall a little bit easier. So I'm going to do the quick turn right here. And I'm going to make sure I'm holding back on the left analog stick so that I pull him back a little bit more. And you're going to be seeing me move his body using the prone. So this is a very useful system with the prone mechanic. You can use the prone mechanic to move bodies so that the enemies don't spot them. And you couldn't use anything like that in the first Last of Us. So you had to commit when it came to getting rid of an enemy and then leaving their dead body where it was. I mean, it wasn't that big of a deal because the stealth was pretty easy to handle in that game. But I'm just glad that on this game, you have more manipulation over the dead bodies to make sure that the enemies don't spot them. And it's a really good design choice. But right now, I'm going to use my bow and arrow on this guy. You have to use the bow and arrow when it comes to helmeted enemies. The bow and arrow is the only weapon that can instantly kill helmeted enemies and keep you in a low profile. And if you don't have any arrows for the bow and arrow, you can use the silent submachine gun, shoot them in the leg, and then just do the stealth kill on them. But of course, you need to use the bow and arrow on that sniper, because it's very hard to hit his leg when the railing is in your way. And it's best you don't waste any ammo with the submachine gun, because you're going to need it for some of the upcoming enemies. Ooh, and this is very important right here. If you get seen by the infected, they will not cause the humans to go into a combat sense, which is a good thing, but there's a bug associated with this enemy. For some reason, if the runner sees you and you grab a human, you will not get the stealth kill prompt, you will get a strike prompt. And when you do the strike prompt, it's obviously a loud takedown, so if you do the strike prompt, you will alert the enemies. It's very broken, so that is why you need to take out that runner, and you have to make sure it doesn't spot you, because if it spots you, you have to break line of sight with it and just make sure that you lose it entirely, or just get rid of it, and that's what I'm opting for, because I do not want to run the risk with the runner just causing me to not be able to do stealth kills for some really dumb reasons. Now, this one right here, the guy in the blue shirt, I'm going to lure him over here by getting him to see me for a little bit. I need to wait for that helmeted enemy behind him to go away. And this is where awareness markers can really come in handy if you're not used to the lure mechanic on this game. Because you can tell when the enemy is going to go into this investigative state by using the awareness indicator. And I'm going to lure him back here. I'm going to hide around this corner. He's always going to search around the corner. Where he goes is random. And unfortunately, he comes towards me. So I'm going to have to shoot him in the leg. And then I'm going to take him out with a stealth kill. I'm now going to repeat the exact same method with the helmeted enemy that was right behind him. And she can't come over to this direction. I think she's restricted to a particular threshold of this area. Either that, or she can probably see a dead body and come over to where I am. But it's good that I hit that dead body, so she's not going to come over to where I am. She's going to investigate for a little bit, but because I'm on this side, she's not going to come this way. She's going to investigate for a little bit, then she's going to lose me. And when she decides to turn around, I'm going to use my bow and arrow to take her out. There is another possibility that she can alert another helmeted enemy nearby, but it doesn't matter. But if she does alert the other helmeted enemy, and she's in a position where she can most likely see you killing the helmeted enemy, you need to wait a little bit. And it's this helmeted enemy right here that she tends to alert. And because I got rid of those two enemies, it's going to be very easy for me to take out these other enemies right here, because that woman who's coming right towards me right now, she makes it very difficult when it comes to taking out these enemies. But she always stands right behind that column, and I'm going to use this time to take out this other helmeted enemy right here. And you do not have to move this helmeted enemy. If you kill her exactly like how I do it, the other enemy will not see the body. And now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to wait for her to come all the way back to the left and take her out. But I'm going to make sure I move her out of the way, because this next part is completely random, and it involves a distraction, because there are two enemies, and they're facing in directions where it's impossible to get past them, and you can't even kill them, because if you try killing one, the other enemy will spot the other one, and they will just alert every single enemy in the area. So you need to use a distraction, and it's random what the enemies do when they're investigating the distraction. There's no telling if they're going to investigate for a short amount of time. There's no telling if they're going to investigate for a longer amount of time. It's very random. And the distraction I'm going to use is I'm going to use the lure mechanic once again, and I'm going to use the third-person cover trick, only the third-person cover trick doesn't work in the Last of Us series because of the way the enemies read your hitbox when you're trying to aim around corners. That at least is advantageous, because I'm able to break line of sight almost immediately when I let go of my aim, so I'm not getting spotted more than necessary. But normally what's supposed to happen is when that helmeted enemy sees me, the other enemy tries to investigate, but right now, he decides to investigate for a very short time, and normally he's supposed to investigate for a longer time, but I get really bad RNG right here. So because he's still standing in the helmeted enemy's point of view, I'm gonna have to lure him over here. But something weird happens. I try to use the third-person cover trick to lure this guy over, and it does work, but for some unknown reason, this helmeted enemy ends up seeing a body that is nowhere in his line of sight, and it's complete bullcrap. So this is where one of the questionable design choices for this section really betrays you if this kind of stuff happens. So now that he's alerted every single enemy to the dead body, they're going to start investigating, and their paths are completely random. If I got good RNG, I could take out the guy on the left and the guy with the helmet, and I could take out the other enemies on the top floor without any threat. I have a good strategy to do that, but you're not going to see it in this walkthrough, so I'm going to have to upload it as a separate encounter, which is really unfortunate. So, right now, that guy's dropped down. He's going to see the body of the left enemy, but I'm going to use this as a chance to take him out. And he comes very close to spotting me, but because he's still in the grace period animation, this gives me a window of opportunity to use the silenced submachine gun on his leg and stop him from alerting the other enemies. And while he's in the animation, I can take him out with a stealth kill. Like, look at that. That is beautiful design right there. If the enemies are going to cheat you with some really stupid designs, then it's good to have a mechanic like this, just to make sure that the enemies aren't going to be so bullcrap. So he's dead, and now there are going to be two enemies that will drop down, and I'm able to kill one enemy with a headshot, and I can get rid of the other enemy with a stealth kill, and then I can get rid of the other enemies using stealth kills as well. But I'd like to voice some thoughts on the Rattlers. I kind of wish the Rattlers had more development on this game. When I was on my blind playthrough, and I was seeing the terrible things that they were doing, I was kind of wishing that the game would expand upon that further, so that it would lead you to question how Abby would be when you finally encounter her in this final encounter. But they didn't really do that. And another thing that I find really confusing about the Rattlers is, you know, with the WLF and the Seraphites, they have good and bad qualities. You know, there's good people on both sides, but with the Rattlers, they're entirely evil. There's no redeeming qualities to these enemies whatsoever. And I find it a little contradictory to the statements that Naughty Dog gave when they were presenting this game, that there wouldn't be any heroes or villains, there would be survivors, but these guys feel entirely like villains. The kind of evil things that these individuals have done. Like, where do you see any good qualities in that? You can't find any kind of redeeming quality. So, I wonder what they were trying to go for with that completely evil side to the Rattlers. But I guess it's there because it's the end of the game, and it's kind of there to complement Ellie's renewed hatred towards Abby, and I think it's also there to put Abby into a position where she is really on the brink of physical and psychological torture, because when you see Abby in this upcoming section, she is just a shell of her former self. You know, she just isn't as strong as she used to be. She just looks so weak, and she is just so desperate to get out of there. It's a completely different side to Abby, and that's probably why they made the Rattlers the way they are. And why they probably didn't want to devote too much time to their development, because they wanted the story to come full circle with Ellie finally tracking down Abby and ending this whole entire revenge story. And I'm really glad what they did, because the ending of this game is perfect. The way they portray Ellie's anger towards Abby as being something that is turning her into something that she herself just finds a lot of fear in, and that it's going against what Joel taught her throughout their time together. It's just perfect. And then the way Abby is portrayed in being in such a terrible state, because all the time you spend with Abby has made you really care about her, and I felt really sad for Abby in this last scene, and just seeing her where she was, it was just truly depressing. And I find it very hard to watch this scene at times, and I can't find myself ever wanting to replay this encounter, because I don't like to see just the way the scene progresses, and it's very rare for a game to elicit the kind of emotions I feel in this game. Like, the last game that I really felt a lot of emotions for was Bloodborne, because Bloodborne, I had feelings of happiness, feelings of anger, and feelings of sadness with some of the boss fights on that game, and it truly cemented Bloodborne's place as having a special place in my heart, and a special place in just my time as a gamer. Like, that game is just so great. Like, not just from a story perspective, but also from a gameplay perspective, and The Last of Us Part 2 is the exact same, and it's the same with the first Last of Us. Like, Naughty Dog truly expressed a lot of care with this game, and they are truly one of the greatest developers ever. That is why I would place The Last of Us series as being one of the best video game series out there, because not only do they deliver a satisfying survival horror experience, but they just go beyond the whole idea of video games just being that. You know, this game is an art, this game is just a very fun experience. It has some really satisfying mechanics, some really satisfying characters, like some really satisfying story moments. It's just so hard to find a lot of negatives with this game. And the only negatives I really see in The Last of Us Part 2 are just with things related to the section designs and the gameplay designs. Like this section right here. So this is the third part of this big encounter, and it's very weird what the game is expecting you to do. I don't know if the game is expecting you to kill all the enemies, but the strategy I found for this third encounter relies on me killing two enemies. The enemy that I killed behind that plant, and this enemy right here. So I'm going to drag this enemy back to the table that I was using as cover, and I'm going to kill her. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a distraction. I'm going to go prone, and I'm going to throw it in a room so that all the enemies will be looking off to the left, and that will give me an opening to move past them. But I need to make sure that that guy in the pink shirt is off to the left, and he's like very far away when I use the distractions, because if you use the distractions, it's going to cause him to face in a direction that you do not want, and it's going to make it very hard to get past these enemies. And the way this section is designed is so weird. For some reason, there are enemies in investigative status that just go on set paths, and then there are some enemies that are just not even aware of your presence, and they're just walking all over the place. And if you restart the checkpoint, it can sometimes cause all the enemies to go back into an unaware status, and it makes no sense. But throw the bottle there, and then there's an enemy around this corner every single time. You've got to grab him. Once you grab him, you need to turn around very quickly so that the enemies do not shoot you. Get behind this corner here, do the strike animation, and then run for your life. When you get through this door, this is the end of this encounter. And that is just the strangest part of this game, done very easily. And I hope that strategy helps you out, and I'm going to definitely do this encounter again separately so that I can show you the perfected strategy. So stay tuned for that, and I'll definitely replay from a chapter select. just so I have the right resources. But now we have this final encounter with Abby, and it's all come to this point right now. And the final encounter with Abby is easy, and you're not supposed to judge the fight based on its difficulty. You're supposed to judge the fight based on the way it portrays its themes. And the way it portrays its themes is great. And the gameplay itself is perfectly fine. So the way the fight with Abby works is you are able to damage Abby with your knife for the first two phases, and she cannot hyper armor through any of those hits. Dodge her and just attack her with your knife for the first two phases, and then for the final phase where you lose your knife, you need to hit Abby once so that she blocks, and then get her to do an attack that is a combo where she's going to do 2 hits. And after you dodge her 2 hits, that gives you an opening to attack her, and then you attack her until she blocks. Then, after she blocks, you need to dodge her first attack and then hit her again so that she blocks, and this will most likely force her to do the 2-hit combo and just repeat the process. And that is how the fight is going to go. I'm not going to talk over this fight because I just think it's a sin to put commentary on this fight for how amazing and impactful it is. And it's the same with the final scene of the game where Ellie has her fingers torn off and she's trying to play her guitar and she can't, so she's lost the one connection she had to Joel by pursuing this revenge story. And I really like that subtlety to the story design on that final scene. This game is just a masterpiece, an absolute masterpiece. And I'm going to conclude the commentary right here because you've heard everything you need to hear for this whole entire game. This has been my Last of Us Part 2, Survivor difficulty, no damage, no crafting, no upgrades, no saves, no listen mode walkthrough. Stay tuned for my Last of Us Part 1 walkthrough on grounded difficulty using very similar restrictions. Thank you all for watching, and you take care now.
Abby. I got you. I got you. They're both this way. can't let you leave. I'm not doing this. No. I'm not gonna fight you. Yes, you will. He's not a part of this. You made him a part of this. Okay. Okay. drinking?
Coffee.
Where'd you get that?
Those people that came through last week.
Oh.
A little embarrassed as to what I had to trade to get it, but it's not bad.
I had Seth under control.
Yeah, I know.
And you need to stop harassing Jesse about my patrols.
Okay. Dina. Is she your girlfriend?
No. No, that was just one kiss. It doesn't mean anything. She just... I don't know why she did that.
But you do like her.
So stupid.
I have no idea what that girl's intentions are, but I do know that she would be lucky to have you.
You're such an asshole.
I'm not trying to.
I was supposed to die in that hospital. My life would have fucking mattered. But you took that from me.
If somehow the Lord gave me a second chance at that moment, I would do it all over again.
Yeah. I don't think I can ever forgive you for that. But I would like to try.
I like that.
Okay. I'll see you around.
Yep.